Today's video is going to be the very important topic of sunscreen and why sunscreen is a partial scam. And I think it's very important because medical science is supposed to be something very rigorous. Obviously, people's lives depend on it. And I think it's very clear that the advice given doesn't make any sense. So first, the current established position is that you should pretty much always wear sunscreen, even if it's super cloudy, which doesn't make any sense. We'll get into that later. But the main thing that is really irrational and is actually causing more harm than good is this concept where science says you should never tan. They say tanning is dangerous. It exposes you to UV, and you should always just wear sunscreen all the time instead. Let's talk about tanning. I'm a pretty tanned guy. So, I asked the following question. Who is most protected from the sun? Person A, who is wearing just sunscreen, person B, who is just tanned, or person C, who wears sunscreen and is tanned? Well, I 100% guarantee you person C is the most protected. And in some cases, tan can provide a lot of protection. When I went to Australia, I put on sunscreen and I got second-degree burns because my application wasn't perfect. I was playing around on the beach, rolling around, jumping and swimming and all these things, and running through sand, and I got really bad sunburn, second degree. Now, after a few weeks when I got my tan on, I could go outside in the sun all day long without any sunscreen and I didn't get sunburned. So tans can be incredibly effective sun protection. Sunscreen doesn't block 100% of UV. If your sunscreen's working perfectly, which it never does, it can block around 95 to 98% of UV. But in much more realistic estimates, where they look at real-world application, it blocks around 50 to 80% of UV, depending on a lot of factors. Like if you're playing volleyball on the beach and rolling around in the sand, or just the average person's not going to meticulously rub sunscreen into their skin perfectly. There's a lot of things that prevent the perfect application. So in some cases, clouds will actually provide better protection than sunscreen. And I think it's kind of ridiculous because if you have a big overcast, you obviously don't need sunscreen. On other days where the clouds are breaking through, you can see the sun, then you probably should put on some sunscreen. This is from a scientific source right here. This is from Yale Medical College. They're saying that you should always wear sunscreen on even a cloudy day because the sun can go through the clouds. Okay, that's true, it can, but it's also important to note that clouds can block up to 80% or more of UV radiation. So it's not like they do nothing, okay? They certainly do provide some protection, but they're not concerned with the intensity of UV. They're only concerned with any UV coming through. So if you get any UV, that's the same as 99% UV exposure is the same as 1%. Okay, so the next thing I want to look at, and this is what I think any sensible doctor would advise. If you're going to an area where there's going to be UV exposure, what you should do is you should be tanning in the evening when the UV index is low, let's say 3 to 4, okay? And doing so will expose you to less UV than if you actually went out at noon with sunscreen on. So if doctors are going to say it's acceptable to go outside at noon wearing sunscreen, then obviously it's acceptable to go tanning in the evening where you have lower UV exposure than at noon with sunscreen. So the idea to always wear sunscreen is really terrible because you're not going to develop a tan, and you're not going to have this double layer of tan plus sunscreen protection. Additionally, it's pretty obvious that the sun is good for your health. It's not just vitamin D protection, but there's all kinds of studies showing it gets rid of depression, mood enhancement, all this other stuff. There's obviously a lot of benefit to getting some sunshine. Humans naturally really love sunshine. When it's a sunny day, we get happy. And there's a reason for that. The sun has a lot of positive effects on your health, but it can also have negative effects too if you have too much UV exposure. So then, I say, which is obviously the more rational option? To always wear sunscreen, or to tan in the evening and then wear sunscreen during high UV periods like noon, so you have a dual layer of protection? And this is not always the case, but for most people, because some people can't tan. I don't think redheads can actually tan, right? But for most people who can tan, this is a good general principle. Or do you think that C, to never wear sunscreen and to just have a tan as your only layer of protection, is better? And some people would say C because they think the chemicals in the sunscreen are really bad for you. I don't know. I've never investigated that. It might be true. But I definitely think that B is going to be the much more rational option in many cases. What do you think? Do you think sunscreen and medical advice is a scam? I definitely think if you're going to go to Australia or anywhere that has high UV, you need to tan. If you don't tan, you're going to get badly burnt.